What's up everyone? In this video we're going to deploy VPN remote access on ASA using ISE as the radio server. On previous videos we saw already how to deploy VPN remote access, but we were using the database on ASA. So now what we want to use is to send those requests to be authenticated against ISE. And when using ISE, we'll have ISE database and we use the Active Directory or the active domain. So I've already shown how to deploy ISE and integrate with the Active Directory. So you can find this link in the video description. As for the VPN remote access deployment, you can find the link in the video description as well, so that we can focus only on this part of integrating ISE as the radius server. And the scenario is going to be the following. We'll be trying to access using the credentials from the Active Directory, so that when the user is authenticated, he will be able to reach the network 1007. And if the user is authenticated using ISE database, he will only be able to access the network 10537. So let's start by configuring ASA. So in terms of reachability, this is already configured, so ASA is able to reach internal networks that are sitting behind the interface G01. I'm not using NAT in this topology, so it's going to be just running. So the first thing we want to do is to start by enabling the AAA server. So going to start with ISE. We'll give it a name, and the protocol we'll be using will be radius. And now we have to reference how can we reach the server. So it's going to be using my inside zone, and the host IP is 10.170.21. Oh, I have to give some space here. Yes. And the key is going to be 65745, and that should do it. So let me just validate that I can reach ISE, and I can. And now let's enable web VPN, and we want to enable on outside interface, and we have to reference the image that the remote access users will use to download. So Anyconnect, we're just going to test for Windows, and we want to enable this. Okay, so now we have two types of users, one from the active domain and the others from ISE database. So we're going to create two VPN pools to be assigned to these different types of users. So IP local pool, and going to be AD remote access pool, and the range is going to be from 1630.10 to 172.16.30.19. Mask is going to be a /24. Just make this wider. And the other pool is going to be from us remote access pool 172.16.30.21 to 172.16.30.29 mask /24 as well. So now we have to create the networks that will be reachable once these users are authenticated, as this is going to be referenced inside the split tunnel. So we want them just to route, just to use the tunnel to reach those networks. So going to create an access list, Windows access list, and name it AD ACL split tunnel, and going to be standard permit and network should be 10.07.255.555.0, and the other one's going to be ISE ACL split tunnel, yes, standard permit, and should be 10.5/24. Okay, this is done. Now we have to specify how the VPN remote access is going to be authenticated, and so that's where we have to point to the radio server that we defined. So that should be web VPN group and general attributes. Let me see if I type it correctly. Yes. And the authentication server group going to be ISE. This is done. Now we want that the VPN to use on SSL client. That's going to be group policy, and this has to be default group policy attributes, yes, and the VPN tunnel protocol is going to be SSL client. Done. So now let's create the group policy for each type of authentication that we want to use. So going to be group policy for Active Directory. Let's just say remote access. Yes, remote access, and going to be internal. Oops. And let's set the attributes for these ones. So we want is the VPN tunnel protocol to be SSL client, and split tunnel and policy to be tunnels specified, and split tunnel network list. The value is going to be the ACL. Just prevent typos around access list. Yes, so split tunnel network list, the value is going to be Active Directory ACL split tunnel, yes, and the address pool is going to be, I believe, let me hold these, hold on. That's correct. Okay, so the address pool value is going to be AD remote access pool. Okay, so save this, and you just have to do the same for the second group. So the group policy, we'll name it ISE remote access internal, and the attributes VPN tunnel protocol is going to be SSL client, and split tunnel policy is going to be tunnels specified and split tunnel network list. The value is going to be ISE ACL split tunnel. Now the address pool value is going to be, where is it? I'm using ISE remote access pool. Okay, let me double check that we have everything in place. So this is the default group policies, SSL client, and we have Active Directory. There's going to be SSL client, unspecified, and this is the ACL, and this is the pool that's going to be assigned. And the same for ISE, ACL, and remote access pool. So everything looks okay from ASA. So now let's jump over ISE. And first thing we have to do is to add ASA as an object so that we can use it on the policies that we want to deploy. So first thing, let's first create a new group just for firewalls. Oh no, and it has to be inside all device types. As for network devices, we're going to add and name it ASA P15, and the IP should be between 10.4 and 15.15, and the model, that's ASAV, and that's 971. Here on device type we'll choose firewalls. As for radios, going to type the same password. That's okay, and let's submit. So this is done. So now we want to create the user, the internal user that we're going to test against. So let me place this user inside a group first, and let's create let's call it ISE identity group, and this user, we'll name it Carvalho. We give it a password, and we'll place inside ISE identity group. Okay, this is done. As for the active directory users, we can see that deployment. Yes, I know. You can see that external identity sources, I have already joined the active directory, so I'm going to fetch the users that are in the active domains. The user is going to be authenticated, and based on his authentication is going to be assigned a certain profile, and this profile will dictate whether this user is able to reach network A or network B. So let's create this profile. This is going to be a result of an authorization. We're going to create authorization profile, and this is where we get to create two types of profiles that we want to validate against. And so let's name it first AD authorization profile, and what we want is to check against the group objects that we created on ASA. So first it's going to be this one, so it's quite simple. So AD remote access. So if the user match these profile, then we're going to say, okay, which network you're allowed to access. Let me replicate this one, and we're going to name it ISE, and the value here is going to be ISE, and we're going to save it. And we're going to place this inside our policy. So let's create a new policy, and we call it VPN remote access policy. And the conditions, we're just going to validate whether it's match, if it's coming from the firewall. Yeah, that's what's going to trigger this policy, and it's going to be default network access. As for authentication, we want it to check against all identity stores. As for the authorization, so this is where we're going to say if it's an active directory. Okay, so it's going to be authorization policy, and the condition has to be coming from, so let's choose the network device type to be a firewall, and it has to be an end operation. This user must be coming from the active domain. We want to authorize him this profile, and I'm going to duplicate this and do the same for ISE. Let me remove this, and we're going to check against the identity group name, and that should be ISE identity group. There we go. And the authorization profile is going to be ISE authorization profile. So if the user authenticated, it's part of the active domain, so this is the profile that is going to be assigned. If it were authenticated based on ISE database, that's the authorization profile that we want him to have. So I'm going to save this, and it should be good to go. So you can check the logs, and let's try to access from the remote PC. So I have already downloaded and installed Anyconnect. So let's try to connect, and let's start with Celesio. And you can see that it was authenticated and authorized, and it's matching our policy, and is connected. So now let's check the routing table, and we should see only the network 1007 that is reachable via the tunnel, and we try to telnet 1007.34, we can do it. It doesn't prevent us from reaching 10.5.37. Okay, but that's internal policy. What we're dealing with is just from the VPN side. So now let's disconnect and try to connect again using Carvalho this time. And that's it. Carvalho was authenticated as well, and he's hitting our policy. Okay, if we look at the routing table, we shouldn't see 1007 but only 10.5.37 reachable via tunnel. And let's telnet to 10.5.37. And we are in, and we can reach 10:07:34 as well, and can have some more detail about this. If we check on ASA, if that's VPN station Anyconnect, and we can see the user currently connected, the IP address assigned based on the pool, its public IP address, and some more details like the group policy assigned to this user. So guys, that's it. VPN remote access using ISE as the database. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.